Welcome, true believers and casual fans alike, to another episode of the Podcast of Champions. Back from the grave, it is I, your host, Lord Deathman, and today we're going to delve deep into a question echoing across the multiverse. Should we be planning a funeral for the House of Ideas? Is the brand merely bruised, or is the studio truly broken? Before we start etching that tombstone, a quick spoiler warning: we are covering past, present, and future MCU projects. If spoilers are not your endgame, consider this your Doctor Strange heads up. Joining us today is a panel of some of the most powerful champions and Marvel aficionados that we have on Sakaar, each with a unique voice and persona. So today in the arena, we have on audio only the POC's reigning sorceress supreme, Loki's mom. How are you doing today?
I'm feeling very bewitched and ready to talk Marvel.
Outstanding. Are you going to be upset if we don't find a way to work your son into this conversation?
Yes, so keep that in mind.
Indeed, indeed. Also in the arena today, we have Merv, the man who always comes armed with a plan. Good to see you today, sir. How are you?
Fantastic. And yourself?
Let me get your hottest take on this. Super Speed, who did it better in live action, Makari or Barry Allen?
Makari. Pretty easily.
Oh, look at that. Okay. Also in the arena today, we have our fan who doesn't have an ounce of fear. His name is Taylor. Taylor, what's going on, main man?
Hey, ready to discuss some MCU.
Indeed. If I had a question for you, I think it would be, given the performance of the Flash and Blue Beetle, what do we do with DC at this point in time? You just pick that into a garbage can. What are we gonna do, man?
James Gunn and Peter Safran have the toughest job on planet Earth right now because it's gonna take a miracle to bring back DC after this disaster. We need to do a whole nother podcast on DC.
Indeed. And hey, we might just do one after we've done this Marvel report card, guys. And last but certainly not least, we have Sakaar's benevolent dictator, the Grandmaster. How are you doing today, sir?
I'm doing great. A bit tired, but I'm doing great. And I'm a little bit curious, actually. I wonder if Taylor brought notes. He did. Yes.
Well, okay. We've got notes on the table, guys. We've got notes on the table. All right. So that being said, you are in the arena with the champions now. And the last time we tuned in for a Marvel update, the studio was navigating some choppy waters. Now it appears that storm has intensified. But before we dive into the tempest, please remember to swing by the Sakaar discussion board at sakaar.freeforums.net. Let your voice be heard amongst champions. And for those of you itching to join the conversation beyond the realms of podcasts and forums, you can find us in the dark dimensions of X, Facebook, and Instagram. Like scrolls, we are all ears all the time. All right. The champions are assembled, and we are going to embark on today's discussion. First thing I want to talk to, and I want to turn to one of our champions to help me break this down. I put together a list of upcoming projects that have already premiered with Marvel, and I want to do a quick round of a speed round of whether you are into a project or not. So Merv, I'm starting with you, and we're going to go through the list of upcoming projects, and you're going to tell me when I say them if the project is hot or not. How does that sound? Are you ready for this?
I'm totally ready.
All right. We had 3 projects that have already premiered in 2023. We had Ant-Man and the Wasp, which many said was going to be the chosen one because Kang was appearing in that, and that didn't turn out the way we had hoped. I would say, objectively, there was a mixed review for that. We had Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, which I think we can all safely say was not necessarily a triumph for the studio, but it certainly was received very well and was positive. And then also what we had premiere this year, which I might have to chalk up as an embarrassment, perhaps the first official embarrassment of the studio. We did have what passed for a Secret Invasion adaptation just back in June. So those are what have premiered, but I have visibility into projects all the way until 2026. So here we go, Merv. Here is the speed round. Loki season 2, hot or not?
Hot.
The Marvels.
Hot.
What If season 2?
Not.
Echo.
Not.
X-Men 97.
Hot. Which is barely.
Dead Man. Okay. I've got that. I've got you recorded there. Deadpool 3.
Hot.
Captain America: Brave New World.
Hot.
Agatha.
Not.
Thunderbolts.
Hot.
Are you here for Ironheart?
Not.
How about Born Again? Daredevil.
Yeah, right in the middle because of She-Hulk.
Okay. All right. What about the much anticipated and beleaguered Blade?
Hot. More curious than hot, though.
Okay. All right. And I mean, are we going to need to get a walker for Mahershala by the time?
If they're going to go that route, they might as well bring Wesley Snipes back.
Okay. Fantastic Four, hot or not?
Hot.
Avengers: Kang Dynasty.
Hot just by being an Avengers, maybe.
Okay. Then I assume that Secret Wars is the same for you? Hot?
Yeah. Hot.
All right. Wonder Man.
Not.
Okay. Armor Wars.
Not anymore. Sorry, Secret Invasion. You ruined it.
Okay. We're almost done here. Spider-Man freshman year.
Hot.
Okay. Marvel Zombies.
Not.
What about this Untitled Wakanda series?
Not.
Oh my God. Okay, and our last one, Vision Quest.
Hot.
Okay, good. You know, now that I've tallied up your votes and I've got what's going on here, you're mostly hot on upcoming Marvel projects. So I think it's safe to say, and I don't want to put any words in your mouth, Merv, but I'd say if you're not still bullish on the brand, you still have hope that they can produce some good content within the next 2 to 3 years.
I'd say I'm optimistic. And I'd also say that if you were to look at which projects of those were films versus TV shows, you'd probably see a lot more hots on the movies and a lot more nots on the TV shows.
Okay. So you're cooling off on Disney Plus, basically.
Yeah. Very cold.
Disney Plus, not. You heard it here with the champions. I'm going to take it to the rest of the champions to see if you want to add anything to. Was there any of Merv's takes, Grandmaster, that you disagreed with in terms of his hot or nots?
Yeah, quite a few actually.
Oh, okay. I'm not going to make you go through a whole recitation, but how are you feeling about the brand? Tell me a little bit about what you disagreed with him on, and
where he was mostly hot. I'm mostly not actually. Quantum Mania was okay-ish. I enjoyed it watching it, but upon rewatching, it got boring real quick. And Secret Invasion really did some harm for me, for the brand, and it influenced a lot of my takes. And I'm not that much into the cartoons as Merv is, and he was only hot for a few of them. Overall, Disney Plus shows, they really didn't have a win. Miss Marvel was a rare win for me ever since the first year that they started it. But the rest has been not that great. Give or take one Guardians of the Galaxy holiday special. And overall, And the movies, yeah. Also, lately, they just Guardians 3 was a rare exception, and not overall. And it's a little bit of a standalone, and it finished an arc, and it doesn't feel like it's really influencing what's to come. And well, yeah, the brand is built on shaky grounds at the moment. I think I said that the last time we spoke
Yeah.
about this.
Yeah, you did.
And those grounds haven't been made any sturdy by what they have delivered lately. And yeah, and I'm actually kind of tapping out. I haven't even watched the I Am Groot new episodes.
Drop those shorts.
Of course, it's not made for me. I realize that but the first time I watched it, I did a rewatch recently, and I rewatched them again, and right now I just didn't feel like watching them up until now, and it has nothing to do with the fact that it hasn't been made for me. I just don't care.
Okay. What do you think they would have to do to bring you back into the circle?
And it's basically what I said last time. They need to start like interacting characters they have been introducing since Far From Home, and they need to start interact from the different projects. They need to start weaving, and they haven't done so. And what they have been producing, the quality is lacking, and they need to really take a look at that. So right now they have a chance with the strike and everything that's going on to take a step back and look at what they're really doing and make it better. And so people get excited again. And why did people get excited for MCU? Because it was one world where everything was happening, and you were reminded of that regularly. And that's not been happening ever since Far From Home. The only thing I can remember was Yelena showing up in Hawkeye, and that's it.
All right.
And that's too less.
Yeah, I mean, your prognostication for the MCU is dire. I'm getting from you that it is pretty much on life support. I do want to go to Taylor and get his thoughts on the slate moving into 2026. But before I leave you, Grandmaster, I just want to ask you, is there one area that you think is really holding them back in particular? Or at this point, is it just too complicated and there's a combination of things that they're just never going to be able to overcome?
Well, if there's one thing that is what I have been annoyed by for quite some time now within Marvel, but not only within Marvel, within a lot of TV shows or movies, is writing. I mean, there's so much being produced. It feels like they give lesser writers a job they cannot handle, and I think what the great thing for Marvel, the MCU was during the Infinity Saga was the excellent writing, and that has been lacking in every department, and they really need to bring the quality there. And if you write good stuff, then it's easier for producers and directors and actors to create great stuff, and then it's easier for the audience to enjoy it. I think it's all starts there.
All right. All right. So we've got overall quality issues here. Taylor, it looks like we need a win here. We've got visibility into the slate into 2026. We just played a game of Hot or Not. How are you feeling about the majority of the projects going into the next 2 to 3 years for the MCU? Do we have to call time of death here, or is there a way out? Is there a way back?
I mostly agreed with Merv's picks. I think there were like maybe 3 that I disagreed with him on. But overall, I'm fairly optimistic. There are definitely challenges ahead, and we'll talk about what led up to these issues that they're currently having. There are issues, but with just with a few of the right decisions, I think, and some of them are tough decisions, but making a few of the right decisions, I think they can right the ship and get it back. Right now, it's still good, but it's not the level of greatness that we were used to from the MCU at this point. But I think they can get back there again by just making the right decisions. And I agree with some of the stuff that Grandmaster said, especially about writing. There are some really great writers in Hollywood, and there's a whole bunch that are not up to par, especially in this day and age. And part of it is because, there's just so many projects being made in Hollywood right now that there just aren't enough really good writers. And I think a lot of the people running these things don't recognize that fact, and they don't lower their expectations. Every show is not going to be Game of Thrones. Right. If you don't have writers that can write like that, then write a show, more like, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., which Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., I think, was one of the greatest superhero shows of all time, but it didn't try to be Game of Thrones,
Yeah. I agree with you 100% there. And I also think that we have to take into account that it's not always just the writers. I think people tend to point to writers because you listen to the dialogue, you see the edits, and you see the final product, and you're like, how could anyone have turned this in? But there are studios that are putting deadline crunches on all sorts of talent, and you can't do your best work if someone has got you on a clock. That's entirely impossible just for the sake of getting this much content out. So Taylor, before I move on, I want to ask you, this is great that we've got a lot of stuff to look forward to, a lot of stuff for different fans, different corners. But do you think that they should maybe cut back on the amount of content they're producing?
Absolutely. They have to, because that's one of the major issues that they run into. And we'll talk about the reasons. There are very real world reasons that kind of caused this bottleneck the last 2 years. Because it was really, phase 4 started in 2021. That's only 2 years ago. And it was like July, I think, of 2021 that Black Widow came out. Maybe WandaVision was before that. But they have to reduce, those are the tough decisions I was talking about. They need to decide what they don't need and get rid of it, and then spread the rest of it out a little bit. 3 movies and two seasons of television on Disney Plus should be the absolute most in a year, and even that's pushing it.
Yeah, you know what? I nominate Taylor for chairman of the board. Get Iger and all those guys there. Get Taylor promoted. Making the calls.
Tell the striking writers I'll actually work for half as much as Iger is getting paid.
That'll be a lot of money to go around to help people, keep their houses and livelihoods going. So, of course, I saved the best for last on this particular topic. Loki's mom, who has been waiting in the shadows of the arena to come out and talk about the slate moving forward. What's your feeling on these projects? Are you excited for the majority of them? Do you not care? Do these seem like terrible ideas? What's going on in your mind, Loki's mom?
Well, a lot of the projects you listed out, I'm not familiar with them, so I can't really have a feeling about them one way or other. I think certainly I'm more than looking forward to Loki season 2, which I'll bring him up since you guys won't.
Well, we had to bring Loki into the
marvelous
conversation.
Tom Hiddleston and that whole cast will come back. I think we can say that maybe it wasn't 100%, knocked it out of the ballpark, but I think season 1 was pretty good. I think we would all agree we enjoyed that, and we're looking forward to the next season. But overall, yeah, I mean, I totally agree with you guys. I mean, the last few years have not been good. I mean, it's just it's everything. They're spread too thin. There for a while they're like just throwing characters out at us. Particularly for someone like me who's not that familiar with all those characters, or at least I've forgotten a lot of them. It's kind of overwhelming.
Yeah.
And another issue is you do have to watch all the movies and TV shows, just in case you're going to miss something for the main event whenever they get around to that.
Right.
Yeah, and having to sit, and that was just punishment to sit through
Oh
your
my
Secret
God,
Invasion.
punishment.
It was horrible, and like I say, and an embarrassment. I mean, I think it was the first
Wow.
really big embarrassment that yeah. What was it? The second Thor movie. You know, it's like thank God for Secret Invasion because now we're not the redheaded stepchild. But yeah, it's just if they don't start improving it, I mean, I'm just going to quit watching it. I don't have to buy all that streaming stuff and go to the movies and whatnot. I mean, if down the road, if it's if it comes up on USA or whatever it is channel, I might watch it then. But I'm
Right,
not
right.
going to waste my
With
money on it. Is what I'm
commercials.
saying. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm
No,
not going to waste
and
my money on it.
I hear what you're saying. I'm hearing terms like embarrassment.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Do we ever think that we would get to the point with this franchise where people felt like they were embarrassed by, what's coming out of the House of Ideas?
Right. They should
I,
have never let that out on TV the way it was. They could
wow.
have just pulled it and try to salvage it however they could. But Samuel L. Jackson's name was all over that, and he basically just phoned it in.
Indeed.
He's been around a long time. He doesn't need Marvel to.
Yeah, he doesn't need the payday, and it
Right.
seems that his sole objective with the MCU
Yeah.
is to
And
be in every single MCU production. That's all Sam Jackson wants to do. Loki's mom,
Mhm.
yeah, let's wrap up by asking you, let's turn to something positive. I think we get the gist of how you're feeling about the upcoming slate. There's a lot of stuff that you don't know what it is, so it's hard for you to get excited about it. Some recent setbacks have left you cold, namely Secret Invasion, which I think everyone on this panel can at least acknowledge was a huge disappointment and waste of that source material. But I want to turn you back to something that I think you're excited about, which is Loki season 2. Based on the marketing material that you've seen, based on the trailers, based on posters, things that are coming out, do you feel more or less excited than you did for season 1 of Loki?
um, well, yeah, I mean, I'm very excited about it. I think what I've seen, the little bit they put out, they haven't put out much, but yeah, it looks promising, and certainly, um, I'd watch Tom Hiddleston read a phone book, so that I'm going to be there regardless for that particular show. But
A mother's love.
a mother's, yes, yes, he has this. Well, I won't go there. What was the question?
Right. I think you answered the question well enough.
Okay.
Thank you so much for your comments on this, Loki's mom, and for honestly talking tough about the brand. They say that we're shills on this podcast, but here we are, not not a sycophantic voice in the room
No,
when it
no,
comes to
we love it when you see a loved one going astray, you want to do everything you can to bring them back.
yeah, you do, you do. So Iger, Feige, all the heads over there, listen, this is tough talk coming from the fans. But I want to move into our next topic, which is really to talk specifically about some of the challenges, some of the obstacles that the studio is facing, and there are no shortage of them. For our listeners out there, you're gonna want to stay tuned in for this part of the discussion. Grandmaster, I'm gonna start with you on this first huge obstacle, which is the Writers Guild of America strike on May the 2nd of 2023. The WGA went on strike, and there seems to be no end to it in sight. They are citing that they need better working conditions, increased compensation, and protections against the threat of replacement via automation. Now, what we also have, is I think if you look globally at what's been going on, 1967 might have been the summer of love, but the summer of 2023 is the summer of labor action. The strike. Do you feel like this is a moment where Marvel might be able to take a beat, sort of re-strategize, come back strong, or is the strike just going to hurt matters further when it comes to the studio's output and quality?
Oh, they should take a beat. I don't know if they do, but Bob Iger coming back now with this strike, they have an opportunity to try to rekindle or find again that spark they had, and because just don't. They just don't at the moment. I mean, you asked earlier, did we ever think that we would talk about this way about Marvel Studios, about this franchise? No, I don't think we did. I think we all knew that at some point there would be projects that would not be as great as the ones that came before, and maybe even bad projects. That happens to the best of studios. I mean, and Marvel Studios was the best at a certain moment in time, and because they just kept making hit after hit after hit. That can't last. Everybody knew that, and I don't think anybody was surprised that when Eternals came out, and all of a sudden it got a rotten score at Rotten Tomatoes. Of course, that hurt a little bit, and I disagree with it personally. But if I step back from it and try to look at it objectively, I understand why it did. But what happened was like the streak like reversed. I mean, now it's more like a streak where you have like bad project after bad project after bad project after bad project, and with one or two exceptions, and that's worrisome, and that's what they need to look at. And I come back to it. It's the writing, and so I'm a little bit. It's a double-edged sword for the writers when it comes to the MCU and Marvel Studios. I mean, yes, they need to be treated fairly and paid fairly and everything else, and better working conditions, and they have been put under a lot of pressure, and maybe that doesn't help. If you're creative, pressure like that maybe doesn't help in the process. I am not a creative, at least not like that. But on the other hand, if you produce this low bar quality, then what are you complaining about if you don't get paid enough? I mean, you need to produce the goods. That's God. Also, yeah. Sorry, but if you're not producing the goods, why should I pay you? If you go to the supermarket and the bananas are rotten, you don't buy them. So yeah, they need to produce better bananas. That's the way I see it, and so that it works both ways. So yeah, the writers do have a point, but yeah, why would Bob Iger pay you if you don't produce the goods?
All right. Well, I want to push back a little bit on your narrative about writers doing a better job. Is management complicit in the quality issues we've been seeing with the studio?
Yeah.
Could
Yeah, they are.
I think everybody sort of has to get their act together. But while management is kind of allowed to fail and flounder, they're also getting paid ridiculously high amounts of money to do so, whereas I don't think the writers are getting that kind of compensation.
I totally agree, because the managers also don't produce the goods. And I'm actually very disappointed in Kevin Feige that he allowed his franchise, his studio, to fall so deep as it did. I mean, he was like always in control, at least that felt like that. I mean, spoilers or anything, he knew what the story was in the Infinity Saga, and it feels like he just don't care anymore, or he just doesn't have it under control anymore. And I mean, even though I enjoyed the finale of She-Hulk, but how could Kevin Feige of the Infinity Saga greenlight this kind of thing to be put out in his name, basically? It said so, produced by Kevin Feige. What the hell? I mean, Secret Invasion, he is a Marvel guy. He knows Marvel in and out. And then he produces a series like this, which I understand because I'm not a comic book reader. It has nothing to do with the source material, and it fails on every department, especially again the writing department. And you need to hire better people, and that's your job as a manager. And so, yeah, I'm critical of what been happening with the writing, but I'm also very critical on the producers because they have allowed it to happen. I mean, they should be in control, and they're clearly not, or they just don't care about their end product anymore, which I cannot imagine is the case. Because in the end, they want to make money, and if then you need to make sure their product is good, and it just isn't. And maybe you don't make that much money from Disney Plus. I don't know. I am not a finance guy, but still, it is your name, and if you put your name out there for grabs,
Yeah, you want to make sure that there's a high quality product there. But
yeah. I mean,
yeah, and I'm totally hearing you. You know, it feels like we're saying the strike probably isn't going to be the best thing that ever happened. So we have to put that into, you know, they're going to take an L until they manage to resolve this with the writers. And when the writers are back, we can work on sort of getting some of the best writers to sort of take hold of the reins again.
And just go for quality. And if you can't get the quality, then just postpone your projects until you can. I mean,
Because we can wait.
yeah, I mean, we used to get 1 or 2 movies a year in the beginning of the MCU, and that was cranked up to 3. And in 2017, it got ridiculous because then we got like 7 in 12 months. But they were all good. They were all good. I mean, you got Guardians 2, Homecoming, Ragnarok, Black Panther, and Infinity War. And
yeah, we had back to back. No one's doubting that first 10, 11, 12-year streak with the MCU. I think legendary. But that being said, Grandmaster, I know you have a lot more to say on this topic, but I do want to get to our next champion and our next topic. Merv, I'm moving over to you. I think this is a good fit for you. As I said, 1967, our summer of love. 2023, our summer of labor action. Marvel VFX artists are lobbying to unionize. August 15th of this year, Marvel Studios VFX artists announced that they would love to unionize. That being said, there's been a lot in the press that's being said about how VFX artists are being treated at Marvel. Are you a pixel peeper, my friend? Do you feel like they need a union and that might help some of the issues that are going on with Marvel? Or is this, or is this just more of an obstacle that is just going to hurt the studio having to deal with this issue?
Oh, it's definitely going to be an obstacle for the studio because corporations generally don't like unionization. So I'm sure it's going to be a speed bump for them. But for the visual effects workers, it's absolutely a good thing. I mean, there are a million different types of unions. And I don't mean like trades. I mean like quality in actually being a union versus just saying you're a union and like pocketing money and doing whatever you want. And they're not all built equally, but I am a union member. So I do support unionization. I think it, as it's written, is a great thing for the average worker, whatever your business or your trade may be. So I think it's a great thing for them if they can get unionized. And we've been hearing for years now that they were overworked and understaffed and all that stuff. So if this can iron out a few of those wrinkles, and it may have to how do you say, like redistribute the funds at the beginning of the process, to make sure that you can afford to pay these VFX guys what they're worth nowadays. I mean, the average superhero movie is filled with visual effects. So it's not like, 40 years ago, whenever there was none, or, it's a whole different world now. Like every movie has all these visuals that they want to do, and you gotta pay for it. And I totally support them unionizing. It's a bad thing for right now as far as, movies and stuff like that go, just because it's to the consumer, and to the corporation probably, but it's a good thing for them, and hopefully it's a good thing in the long run.
Yeah, I tend to think it will be a good thing in the long run. It is going to force studios to sort of do better pacing when it comes to these projects. So rather than grinding these guys out to produce 4 or 5 movies in a year, keeping them working and sleeping under their desks, also we could get like third act CGI pixel smearing or whatever that is. And I'm not someone who's like hypercritical of you know, pixels and stuff like that. But then I saw the Flash, and then I'm like, okay, now I know what it's like when these guys aren't treated fairly. But at the end of the day, this could be a part of the sort of rehabilitation of Marvel, is my take. If they do get this union up and off the ground, they start treating these guys fairly. I mean, a person who is not tired, who is not overworked, who is not undercompensated, can do a better job. That's just physics, could be science, that could be reality. But
Happy employees create a happy environment. And
Yeah.
in an ideal situation, I'm sure there's going to be examples to the contrary, but it seems like a good thing for now.
For now. Thank you for your thoughts on that. Taylor, I'm going to move to you next. Again, nothing but roadblocks here. This one, I think, really, falls into your bailiwick in terms of superhero fatigue. We keep hearing about it more and more each day. In fact, on August 11th, there was a headline in Variety. The director of Marvel's own The Marvels went ahead and said superhero fatigue absolutely exists. That was an emphatic statement. And she also went on to say that her solution to that was that The Marvels is just going to be a really silly and zany movie as a way of addressing. Uh, I'm not making this up. August 11th, Variety. What do you think of her notes on superhero fatigue and her proposed solution to it?
There is no superhero fatigue. There is bad quality fatigue, and there is market saturation. There's just too much stuff to keep up with, and the audience makes decisions as to what it's going to see and what it's not going to see, and what it's going to see in theater and what it's going to wait for streaming, etc. So it's not superhero fatigue. If a great superhero movie comes out,
People will go.
Spider-Man No Way Home, $1.9 billion at the theater. So if it's something they want to see, they'll go and see it. Her solution of make it silly, I think we tried that with Thor: Love and Thunder, which I actually love that movie, but not always the right answer. Okay, and it creates some mixed feelings. But no, there's no superhero fatigue. People say, oh, they're doing the same thing over and over. It doesn't matter if you do it well. You can do it over and over. I'm looking across the room at my classic TV section. I got the box set, all 5 seasons of Get Smart. Show won multiple Emmys. Don Adams won 3 Emmys in a row for Best Actor in a Comedy Role. They did about 12 jokes in that entire series. They just did them over and over and over for 5 seasons. They just did them so well.
Yeah, that people kept watching.
And he was such a master at delivery, and the writers were so good at just modifying just enough to make it different so that you'd get a laugh out of it every time. But that's the craft, and it's so difficult to do, and it requires the writers and the showrunners and the directors and the executives all to be on the same sheet of music. So no, it's not. No one wants to see a superhero movie anymore. They want to see a good superhero movie.
Well, not to bring the competition into this Marvel discussion where we're trying to talk honestly and frankly about the current state of the studio. But Taylor, I have to push back and I have to say, look at The Flash. Abysmal box office. Look at Blue Beetle. An
Like
objectively good film. We're not doing the kind of numbers that we need to do or that we were used to doing. Are you really sure about this fatigue? Do you think it's really about oversaturation and not so much that people are just tired, like the superhero movie is not going the way of the ninja film or the Western?
No, I think, like I said, they want good superhero movies. Now, of course, that's a subjective thing, but there are generalities. More people will agree with one side or the other. DC has burned its bridges badly in a
Napalm them.
variety of ways. It's made some really bad movies. It's made some really mediocre movies that should have been spectacular movies.
Yeah.
And it has already said, this sucks, we're not doing it anymore. We're going to do something else starting in 2025. So that kind of depresses the audience, the excitement right there. So no, I don't think DC's problems are superhero fatigue. I think they're DC fatigue at this point. It's quality control.
All right. All right. This show certainly isn't about Detective Comics or the movies that are based on properties of such. So, Taylor, I'm going to thank you for your thoughts on comic book fatigue. I happen to agree with you. I don't really think that it's actually a phenomena. I think it's really an oversimplification of a lot of different things for why superhero movies of a certain ilk are not performing the way they should be. So, again, I save the best for last with Loki's mom. Are you still with me here, Loki's mom?
Yes, I'm with you, sir.
Awesome. Awesome. Are you ready to take on our next topic so we can get your thoughts on the changing sentiment of Marvel Studios? And this is a tough one, and I saved it for you because you are always so nuanced with your commentary.
Okay.
It used to be we could
Well,
get nothing.
Can I start?
Go
I
ahead.
just want to make a quick comment on what Taylor was saying about fatigue.
Sure.
Yeah, I would agree that genre, the comic book, and not just comic books, but that whole, if you kind of put in science fiction and action and anything like that that's dealing with unreality, I mean, James Bond's not as science fiction, but that's not real either. That stuff doesn't go on.
Hey,
But anyway,
Moonraker, you never know.
yeah, well, yeah, true, you never know. I mean, have you ever read the life story of Christopher Lee? He was the real James Bond, but that's a topic for another podcast. Anyway, yeah, it's that genre has really taken in like what the Western was, what a lot of and this maybe go into what you're talking about, changing sentiments. If you go back and you look at a lot of TV shows and movies, and you can see things that particularly me, because I've mentioned my age before. I'm not afraid of it. I'm 69, so I have a deep history as going to the movies and watching TV back when you only had 2 channels. And yeah, I mean, if
69
you
years
missed an
young.
episode of Star Trek, you were out of luck. You had to wait till the summer reruns to pick it up. But anyway, yeah, I mean, it was very. We can't do that anymore. We can't go out and slaughter the Indians. They're attacking the settlers because, come on, there was more to that history than that, and I think we're aware of it now. So I think that's one of the reasons why I think that the genre's not going anywhere, and the fatigue does come from just right now. Is it oversaturated? Yeah, you could say that. There's maybe a lot of it that's competing, and that's taken people away from this. Because I'm only can be interested in so many things. And I think that's a part of it. That's all I was going to say. But okay, and what was your question now, Lord?
Well, no, I want to say that I do agree with you and with Taylor, and we want to acknowledge the wisdom and the experience that you bring to the panel, which is why we love having you on the show, by the way. But I did want to talk about the idea that PR opinions, the media has really turned against Marvel. And I wanted to read a couple of headlines just to back this up. There was a time during the history of Marvel where you could read the average headline about it, and you'd be talking about a record that had been broken, a box office milestone. You'd be talking about a lot of great reviews. But here are a couple that I just put together just at random, did a search for Marvel in some of the trades, and this is what I'm seeing. Elizabeth Olsen needs other characters in her life, and besides the Scarlet Witch, there's no longevity in playing just one character. That's from Variety. Gwyneth Paltrow says, ask Marvel about Pepper Potts, her return. Not me. Iron Man died. What do you need Pepper without Iron Man for? That was also from Variety. All of these are going to come from Variety. Here's a comedian, Adam Devine. He says Marvel movies ruin comedies. They make those movies kind of funny, but it's not real comedy. Here's Seth Rogen. He says fear of the process has turned him off from Marvel and DC films. Is it a system we'd get really frustrated with? And it goes on and on and on, but I'll share just one or two more. The director who turned down Black Widow drags Marvel movies for ugly sound. The way they use music is actually horrible. And my last one, again, randomly pulled headlines about Marvel. Here is after calling Thor 4 too silly, Chris Hemsworth says Thor 5 must be unpredictable. I don't want to continue for so long that fans will roll their eyes. And then we're also dealing with Tana Huerta and also the very talented Jonathan Majors as far as sexual assault allegations. This feels like I'm reading headlines for DC. No offense to those guys, but this feels more like I'm talking about, Warner Brothers and the DC brand and not so much Marvel. Why do you think we have people's opinion turning against the studios? They delivered on 3 exceptional phases of movie making. They single-handedly propped up the movie industry for quite a long time. And let's be honest about that. Without Marvel for some of those years, Hollywood wasn't knocking anybody's socks off, especially around Oscar time in terms of box office. I think the industry owes a lot to Marvel in terms of just propping it up for quite a while. So what do you think is it everyone loves a winner and no one loves a loser, Lokismom? What's going on here?
Well, there was a mixed bag of criticisms there, and as far as the actors and Chris Hemsworth and Elizabeth Olsen and whatnot, I mean they're actors. Certainly they don't want to be one note, and they want to keep their careers going and do other things because they can't play these characters forever.
They can't, but I'm going to challenge you and say, I mean, other than those extraction films, is Chris Hemsworth really lighting the world on fire? I mean, I watched a little bit of those Nat Geo documentaries. Come on, dude. We know that there's a power alley for you. And same thing. I mean, cute as a button. Elizabeth Olsen, love her to death. Saw her on Hot Wings. It was awesome. But beyond the Scarlet Witch, what do we got really going on here? Am I being a dick or?
Well, no. No one should bite the hand that feeds them. Particularly right in the middle of it. I mean, maybe after you've left the franchise or something, and then you want to knock it. That's their choice. I honestly, I don't pay that much attention to it. But when you get into some of the other criticisms, I mean, to criticize something is not to necessarily attack it or want to bring it down.
Yeah, or attack it.
You're bringing up whatever. What was Seth Rogen?
Yeah, Seth Rogen.
Seth Rogen.
Adam
Devine, the
Paltrow,
Hornet, the Green Hornet. Yeah, Gwyneth Paltrow. She should just sell her stuff and
sell her goop, and not,
yeah, whatever. But yeah, no, I think all the criticisms, I think most of them, I would say, are legitimate. Of course, we're doing it right now, and we're doing it out of love. We're not doing it out of hate for the franchise. We want the best for it. Going back to Loki, Tom Hiddleston, one guy
yes,
who doesn't.
Let's always bring it back to Loki.
Yes, one gentleman who does not do that, and I call him a gentleman, and I think it really applies to him, and that is Tom Hiddleston. You never hear him say anything but positive things about Marvel when he does say stuff about it, and he's always there. I mean, he's positive about it. He makes the time to go to the things when he can, whenever his schedule lets him, or the diseases are not flowing around the world. So yeah, I think if more of the actors and the people that participate in that can get, because I think he still has that spirit that Stan Lee had. I think the loss of Stan Lee, I think, is part of the issue that we're not talking about here.
Oh wow, that's
Um,
great.
Feige, because he was the spirit of it. You know, he was there. I don't know whether he was hands on. I don't know how much he was, but his spirit, he was there. You know, we have to please. This is Stanley. With this, he's going to see this. So that's what they were aiming for. I think. I don't know for sure. Um, that's what they've lost, and particularly the whole Disney, I think, partnership has been a debacle. It really all started going back. Yeah, the COVID and everything played into that, and their schedules got screwed up, and then, but then it all became about making that next big box office. That's all they cared about.
Yeah.
That they wanted to get that TV show up and running. They wanted to get the money for that. I mean, the, going one more time back, one of the promotionals is this whole McDonald's thing, and I really don't like when they
This
do
product
that.
placement that's going on there with
Yeah, but
Loki.
it's just well, ooh, and then some.
Indeed.
I don't. They're selling Loki stuff at the whatever drive-through. And I'm not a big fan of stuff like that. But is it their right, and Disney and Marvel's right to do that? Absolutely, they own the product. They do make the money any way they see fit. But that don't mean I'm going to have to love it or I'm going to pay for it down the road
Yeah.
if they keep it up. But anyway, I don't want to get mad.
Yeah. No, no, totally understandable there. And thank you, for your thoughts on that. Now, champions, we are diving into a brand new segment that we're super excited to debut to our listeners. We call it the Community Corner. For this section of the show, we reached out and polled you, our dedicated Sakaar community members, to gather your unfiltered sentiments on the current state of Marvel Studios. Your passion, your critiques, your hopes, we wanted to hear it all. So we handpicked some of the most riveting quotes from the discussion. Please note that these quotes have been edited for clarity and for brevity. And in respect to our community members' privacy, no comments are attributed by name. So let's see what Sakaar's brightest minds had to say. First comment that we have from a Sakaar community member who is a gladiator, strong in the arena, no doubt. And I quote, the mainstream superhero film is dead. They would be better off backing off from the universe approach and just do individual self contained stories, unquote. Merv, what do you have to say to this individual in this comment?
I mean, certainly that's a stylistic choice. If they were to do that, it would be interesting to see how it goes. But I think with the Guardians 3 film alone making over $800 million, the mainstream superhero movie can't be all that dead. you know, Maybe they need to temper their budgets on it, so that they remain profitable. But that's a whole different discussion. But no, I wouldn't say that it's dead. Just
Okay.
it has hits and misses, hots and
And,
knots, so to speak.
and that makes sense to me. And what do you think about backing off from shared universes and just doing individual self contained stories? Is that a way forward for the genre?
I will redirect and say that in regards to the MCU in particular, I would actually appreciate less of a shared universe in the regards to the TV shows. That way, they're not totally necessitating the TV shows in order to follow the movies. But the movies, I am fully on board if it wants to remain shared. I think the problem with not sharing them or changing it up, so to speak, in regards to the MCU especially, is that you have to be clear about it. Because I think that's the confusion for the audience is, you watch something like Moon Knight that doesn't relate to anything. Is it important? I don't know. Or you never saw Moon Knight, and it's like, well, did I need to see Moon Knight to see Ant-Man 3? I don't know. Until you go into the movie theater and then you don't understand a part of it, and then it doesn't make any sense, and you just grow more dispassionate about it. And I think that's the problem, is a lack of clarity on if everything's connected or if it's not. And I don't know that they need to come right out and say you don't need to watch this product, but I think the divider of movies and TV shows would be a good place to at least somewhat lean into that, where it's like you don't need to, kind of the way Agents of Shield was. You don't need to follow this, but if you did, maybe it adds a little bit extra.
Indeed. That makes a lot of sense to me. Thanks for your notes on that comment. And thanks to our contributor on Sakaar who wrote those notes. Our next comment comes from a POC founding member and a 4X grand champion. So superpowers in the arena as far as that is concerned. And I quote, if they just wrapped up this multiverse nonsense and kicked back off with a more streamlined and focused approach, they'd be fine. There's been no DC unsalvageable disaster. They just need the right direction. Loki's mom, what do you have to say to our 4X grand champion on Sakaar with regards to those notes? Is it true?
True. The last part, absolutely, I'd agree with. The first
So you
part
don't think
about
we're in like DC territory in terms of things being a complete disaster?
not yet.
Oh, not yet.
Not yet. Not yet. Well, I mean, they're not repeating. I mean, all DC's been able to do is repeat itself. So, they okay, let's put out another Batman movie.
Right, and not in a good way. Repeat
We gotta get
themselves, but
some
not in a
money.
good way.
For
Yeah.
the other
Wha-
projects, but the first part, I think, as far as the multiverse idea, I think they have not handled it well. The idea of the multiverse itself, I think, is I think intriguing because it's divergent from the Thanos idea of the guy, the one guy who's going to take over the universe and whatever. Although that Kang is part of that too, but at least it's not the same. You know what I'm talking about. So I think if they could just get that darn thing off the ground and get into it, I think, but when you think about it, it's the multiverse is confusing, it's chaos, it's all these crazy things going on. And that's exactly what's happening to Marvel in real life. It's like
Art echoing reality there.
right, exactly. Life imitates art. Yeah, so I think that part's at least to somebody like me, I think that part's very interesting. So I'm getting a kick out of that.
Okay.
I don't think it's helping the fans though.
Indeed. But it is good to see that you are agreeing with our founding member here and our 4X grand champion on Sakaar.
Yeah.
I want to take it
And I'm
to.
I'm sorry. I
No,
want to
go
agree
ahead.
with Merv that I think if they would just carve out some of this stuff from the mainline narrative, I think that would be a big improvement.
Indeed, indeed. I want to get to our next quote from our poll on Sakaar. This comes from a challenger, surely, climbing his way up the ranks of the arena. Respected Sakaar community member and always a champion. And I quote, I don't think the current MCU can be salvaged. The MCU ride is over. I think they need a hard reboot. They can't fix it. They can't. Taylor, what do you have to say for this person? What becomes of the brokenhearted? Those whose love for the fandom has departed. What do you have to say to this young person here?
No, I disagree with that. I think that is taking it too far. Like I said, it's a difficult road ahead. It's filled with perils, but I think if they make the right decisions, they can right the ship. I much more agree with the previous quote about wrap up the multiverse. And as you guys know, I have never been a fan of the multiverse. I've said it multiple times. It's a minefield of potential dangers, and I think they're seeing some of that now. So I agree, they need to do what they can to wrap up this multiverse saga and move on to other things. But is it unsalvageable? No. I mean, come on. First of all, the movies are still making double. The lowest grossing MCU movies making double what DC movies are making right now. Yeah. It's not even close.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure in a later place we'll get into more detail about exactly what's causing these issues that we've had so far, and there's a lot of reasons. But like I said, I think it can be righted. It is difficult, and the whole concept of a complex shared cinematic universe like this is a house of cards to begin with. One thing goes wrong and it's a domino effect. oh, something went wrong, we have to change the order of release. Well, wait, if we do that, that story has to build into this story. We have to rewrite the script and do reshoots. Otherwise, it falls apart. And that's part of the problems that have happened so far. So it's very difficult to execute this thing. And, if something happens like, hey, your big bad gets arrested, that can cause a lot of problems too. Right. But like I said, with the right people in charge, Feige gets on the horse, gets the right people around him, because no one can do everything. And I have no idea how they're organized at Marvel. I don't know if he has a vice president in charge of movies and a vice president in charge of series and a vice president in charge of cartoons. I have no idea how they're organized. But however it is, they make sure they have the right people there, and that Feige is still hands-on, final say on everything.
Indeed. Thank you for those thoughts, and thank you to the Sakaarian who submitted those quotes. Again, we did do some cleanup for grammar and a little bit of clarity there, but I believe we represented everybody fairly well. This last quote, Merv, I'm going to let you do double duty in this before we close out the community corner. And quote, "My instinct is put together a new series with new characters. Make an X-Men or Fantastic Four series, have the same aesthetic as the MCU, but apply different characters and worlds." What do you say to the grand champion who submitted that comment on Sakaar? Do you agree?
I actually like that instinct quite a bit. Maybe less so with the Fantastic Four, but the X-Men have a very deep expansion. It's not just a few people, it's like hundreds, if not thousands, of characters that are quote unquote within the X-Men, comics and community and mutants and all that stuff. And to try to, if you thought we've got oversaturated amount of characters now, just wait till you start introducing X-Men teams. They're going to come at dozens at a time. So that is definitely a road to cross. And I'm a big fan of X-Men comics, cartoons, whatever. That was my first comic book love, really, was X-Men, the X-Men cartoon of the 90s. So I want to see it adapted in some way. I want to see those stories continue. But how it melds with the existing MCU is going to be super tricky. Yeah. And I totally understand a hesitation to just say, oh, yeah, just bring them all in, and that's, that can be like the minefield, like Taylor said. It could just all blow up in your face at that point, because everyone's like, oh, what is going on? Like, what do I need to watch before I, watch Deadpool 3 at this point with Hugh Jackman as Wolverine? Like that is legitimately a concern for the fan base at this point. Because if you got to watch 14 X-Men movies to understand where Hugh Jackman's character comes from, I don't think you're going to need to, but if you feel that at the beginning, that just makes it feel like work. It's like, I don't have time for this, and that's whenever, as a fan, you probably check out and go find other things that are easier to digest. So I definitely, I think I agree with the sentiment there that could be a very good idea. Just, take the X-Men, put them over here, create a whole shared universe with them, and just let those stories tell themselves. And maybe down the line you have a big Secret War movie where they all kind of come together just for one movie, and then they go their separate ways again, and just little things like that. But these are all just thoughts. So until we see them on the screen.
Seriously, excellent thoughts. You're almost selling me on it. You and this grand champion. You've almost got me sold on it. I like the idea because it's kind of a soft reboot as long as it's all happening in the same universe, but we don't go into deep references to the stuff that came before. We let the X-Men and the Fantastic Four sort of stand on their own. People don't understand, you may be a little jaded by some of the lesser known properties you've seen from the MCU with Shang-Chi and the Eternals, but X-Men and Fantastic Four are kind of like nuclear bombs. It's really coming to play in terms of IP, and no more of this sort of obscure stuff that we're going to try to work to make popular. This already has huge built-in fan bases. So That being said, guys, I want to wrap up the community corner. I want to thank again all of the folks on Sakaar for contributing to the poll and voting. I want to quickly sort of sum up our results on that poll for pure transparency. Unfortunately, almost half of the people who participated in that poll felt that the MCU is in so much trouble right now that they need a hard reboot, and that is a harsh reality to face. But the Sakarians have spoken. So nearly 40% of Sakarians felt the MCU needed a hard reboot. I would say about 50%, I guess that really is the majority there, felt that the MCU may not need a hard reboot, but was in some kind of duress. They either need to make some tweaks to get things back on track, or they need to do something to bring back the consistency and the magic. So thanks to everyone who voted in the poll. We'll probably be doing more polls like that. So keep coming to the boards and the forums to get more chances to participate and have your voice heard there. So we've had a blistering conversation about Marvel. We've talked a lot about some of the obstacles they're facing, the way the sentiment for the studio is changing. We have read some quotes from fans. Some people are so checked out, doesn't feel like anything can be done for the MCU. I don't know what we should do, Taylor. Should Sakaar just become like an all football all the time message board? Is that our next step?
No, I don't think so. As you've already pointed out, there's a whole bunch of Marvel products still upcoming, and said hopefully some of them will get canceled. Like I said, hopefully they'll make those tough decisions.
Yeah,
and they'll spread it out, and they'll focus, because this is one of the biggest problems they've had. Just too much, too fast. And I know part of it was we had COVID restrictions for a long time. Stuff piled up. We lost a lot of money during that time. We need to make money. It's important. So
Yeah.
throw it all out there get it all out there as quickly as possible. Oh, by the way, we've got this new thing called streaming. We've got to put a whole bunch of stuff on there and get a whole bunch of subscribers on that. And it caused problems. It's just a matter of, quantity over quality at some point. Hopefully now they'll take a breath. Now, unfortunately, there's new obstacles like strikes and things that are causing the same sorts of problems.
Oh, yeah.
Hopefully they won't make the same sorts of mistakes. Hopefully they're taking this time to really plan out the way ahead. And like I said, making those decisions. I'm sorry, Ironheart.
On the chopping block. Got it.
You heard of Batgirl? Ironheart.
Yeah. Taylor, you seriously have my vote to take over when Bob Iger decides to, hit the links for good.
But real quick, I don't know how close we are to wrapping up here, but there's one external problem that the MCU has that we haven't even talked about yet.
Please.
And I apologize. I'm going to use a 4-letter word, but that word is Sony. How many people out there in the general movie-going casual audience think Morbius is part of the MCU?
Oh my. Yeah.
Okay.
This is real talk right here.
That's one problem that Sony brings. Inferior products with the Marvel name on them. Maybe they'll make some great stuff later on. I'm kind of interested in Madam Web, but we'll see where it all goes. All right. But that is one problem. The second problem that Sony brings is they still own Spider-Man in the movies. The biggest, no ifs, ands, or buts, biggest character in the entire history of Marvel is not owned by Marvel Studios for movie making purposes. And a whole bunch of side characters and supporting characters, including some of the best villains in the history of Marvel, are owned by Sony. So they can throw a monkey wrench in at any time. So that's another issue. And again, the whole future of Marvel is fraught with so many dangers at this point. Yeah. But there's always been dangers, and they've always been able to navigate them. I'm hoping that they can navigate all the dangers that they're facing right now.
I think they can, Taylor, and I have to say, my Marvel fanboy stripes are gonna be, showing quite clearly here. But I think that as a comic book collector, I always go back to my roots as reading comic books avidly. You could read a series, be it the Avengers or X-Men, read it for a long time and enjoy it, and then a new creative team comes on. And then you're like, oh, I don't really like what those guys are doing. You give it a chance for an issue, you give it a chance for 2 issues, and you're like, you know what? I think I'm going to take a break. I'm going to tap out here for a minute. But love for the characters is never lost. You know, we as a comic book collector, you would never be saying because they made these changes, the X-Men is no longer for me or whatever the property is. And I think that Marvel characters really have that type of durability where no matter what kind of ringer you run them through, you can still bring back those classic archetypes of relatable characters to build great stories on. So for me, this is a real big sort of obstacle and stumbling block that they have to deal with, but I do think that they can overcome here. So Taylor just put on his CEO hat, and I would like the rest of the panel to do that as well. He talked about what he felt is the primary problem going on right now and how they can fix it. Loki's mom, I'm going to ask you to put your CEO hat on and tell me, you know, what do you think is just the single biggest problem that they have, and what would you do if you had the big chair to fix it?
They have no center of gravity. Right now, everything's just kind of revolving around this thing called the next big success, the next big saga, and they can't. No one can get a and land it and stick it right now. What would I do to remedy that?
I know I put you on the
That
spot.
was just find the right person, whoever that person is, and give them the control, and just say, let them have the finals. Let them see it, the project as it's going forward, and let them. Or it doesn't have to be an individual, but you know what I'm talking about, a small cabal or something, and let them kind of guide it that way. Let them be the showrunner. I think they just
Yeah.
need one showrunner for the whole kabang. And
Do you think it's time for Feige to step down and maybe we need new leadership?
either he needs to step down, or he needs to get rid of some of his other responsibilities and focus solely on that.
Okay. Okay. So at least a reduction in his role would be a part of your master plan to sort of get things back on track.
Well, I would maybe a step down as far as his prestige or whatever, but I think he would be back in the Stan Lee position
Okay. Right.
of being
Taking
the
on
heart and
Stan
soul.
Lee's role.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, taking on Stan Lee's role. That sounds really like a good fit for Kevin Feige to become the
Yeah,
spiritual successor to Stan Lee. Feels like
yeah.
yeah.
Obviously he loved the man. I think they had a great relationship. He needs to go back and find whatever that was that they shared together, building up the MCU to what it became.
Yeah, I could see Kevin Feige making those metal hands, the metal horns, like to imitate Spider-Man with the web swingers, like just the way Stan like to do in every photo. We'd now be asking Kevin to do that. But yeah, anything else to add on that, Loki's mom, or
No, I think uh yeah, I think we've pretty much covered it all. I mean, I think yeah,
okay,
I
yeah,
disagree. I just, you said the 40% over on the Sakaar, and I get that. I mean, I get it. You're just like, let's start over, just start over. But I think that's just a kiss of death right there.
right, right. We'd never be able to sort of pick up the momentum. And I think one of the things that people often forget about the MCU that makes it so unique is that it is an ongoing story in a shared universe. And you take that away from the MCU, even more so than something like DC, I think it will fall apart. That's what really makes it special. That it's all happening right now and it's an interconnected story. So thank you for your notes, Merv. I'm going to ask you to do the same thing. You are the CEO of Disney. You are the president of the studio. What's the biggest problem you can identify going on these days, external, internal, and how do you think you go about fixing it?
CEO at Disney, I'm just counting my dollars and swimming around in gold vault like Scrooge McDuck. And, I think probably the biggest thing, and probably possibly the easiest thing to fix, is just the lack of cohesion between products. I mean, we talked about it before, but the world building in like phases 1 through 3 was magnificent.
Yeah.
Characters, corporations, events. They held those films together and made like a clear, cohesive timeline. Sorry, I get choked up just thinking about it.
Yeah.
They had a clear timeline with, consequences and events being referenced years later with perfect clarity. You knew exactly what ramifications certain events had, and like the Stark Industries was there throughout so many different things. Even if Stark wasn't there himself, you'd see like the industry logo, and it just really helped build like a world that you believed could be interconnected. And the past few years just have not felt that same level of cohesion. And just a few examples, like, how does Moon Knight tie together with anything? Same with Werewolf by Night. How come nobody has paid any attention to the giant eternal thing that come out of the earth? The Galactus creature that is, like this at the top of the world. you know,
Tiamat.
what's the link between like Shang-Chi, Ant-Man, and Spider-Man: No Way Home? Like it just doesn't feel. Nothing's building off of each other, and so it feels like a lot of stuff just slips through the cracks or just goes forgotten about because, for example, like
reading to the saga.
yes, in something like Shang-Chi, I thought was good, and they introduced that character. Well, when's the next time you're going to see him? Like he's not maybe going to show up until 2026. And that's a maybe at this point because they haven't even confirmed that. And it's like, well, then, I might have forgotten who that was by then. Like, within 5 years, we had 3 Iron Man movies, just to put it in perspective. So 5 years of one Shang-Chi movie, it's like, well, are you surprised nobody cares about these characters, or you forget who they are because you've had 12 movies in between the first Shang-Chi and the next time you see him again? Like, I don't even know who this is anymore, it just feels like a lifetime for the MCU to just leave these characters, introduce them, and then leave them, And I just think bringing that cohesion back is a big thing. And just bringing in an old wrestling adage in regards to dealing with an audience, like if you confuse them, you lose them. And I just think a lot of MCU fans are confused, and that's when they start getting lost and they're just going on to other things. So you can bring them back. There's the hope, but as of right now, I think that's part of the reason why is you don't know who the main characters of this story is anymore. For a while it was Stark and Rogers and others like that, but it's like, who's the main character now? You don't even know because they're not using them really.
Yeah. That's a lot of tough talk, Merv, in terms of what the studio should be doing, how they should be handling things. But I think you are absolutely right. We have lost that dramatic through line that the first 3 phases of this universe had. It is difficult to keep track of all of the details, and none of it seems to be adding up to anything. Even when the quality is good on a project, you're still kind of feeling like, oh, that was just a siloed thing that happened. So I can agree with your notes 100%. Thank you for your observations. Ladies and gentlemen, and boys and girls out there in fandom land, as the curtain draws on this episode of the Podcast of Champions, I must pause and extend a deep, heartfelt gratitude to our esteemed panel, including Loki's mom, Merv, Taylor, and Grandmaster, who did have to leave us a bit early for this session. Thanks to all of you for your contributions today. I also want to thank our devoted listeners and to all of the passionate fans on Sakaar that participated in the poll. We look forward to future contributions from you guys and debates and so forth and so on. If you've enjoyed our cosmic journey today, I urge you to hit the like button. Share this episode far and wide. Drop your thoughts in the comments. And if you haven't already, do subscribe. It's just a click for you, but for us, it's a nod to our shared universe. Until next time, keep that fandom flame alive. And remember, if you are within the sound of my voice, you too are a champion.